Fever time. Bow, bow, bow. No.
There we go. There we go.
We crushed them in fast break points 17-8. Right, we crushed them in second chance points 20-11. Okay, all of those things, y'all.
The last time Seattle played Indiana, it wasn't basketball. It was a message. August 2024. Caitlin Clark, just a few months into her rookie season, walks into Seattle riding a wave of hype and dominance. She's putting up numbers no one expected. The Fever are blowing the Storm out in their own building. The crowd is stunned. Clark's lighting them up, dishing assists like it's practice. Then, boom, Skylar Diggins, walking off the court, makes contact with Clark. Not an accident, not incidental, a blatant body check. No apology, no explanation. The clip goes viral within minutes. Headlines everywhere. Social media explodes. Some call it assault, some call it sending a message. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just a game anymore. The Seattle Storm didn't just lose. They lashed out, and suddenly they weren't just another team. They became the villains. The league stayed quiet, but Indiana didn't forget, and neither did Caitlin Clark. Now, fast forward 10 months to June 24th, 2025, the rematch. The energy is thick. The arena is buzzing. You can feel the weight of everything that's led to this moment. But what happens next? Nobody saw coming. Caitlin Clark couldn't buy a bucket. Her worst shooting night of the season. Just 6 points. 0 for 6 from beyond the arc. On paper, a disaster. But here's where the story flips. Because instead of collapsing, the Indiana Fever responded like a team possessed. Aaliyah Boston exploded with a career-high 31 points. Lexie Hull went full beast mode, crashing the glass and snagging her first ever double-double. And Kelsey Mitchell? She carved her name into WNBA history with a lights-out shooting performance that left Seattle stunned. This wasn't a comeback. This was a beatdown. And the most shocking part? The Fever didn't even need Caitlin Clark to deliver it. This is the story of how 3 players, Boston, Hull, and Mitchell, turned one of the most bitter rivalries in the WNBA into a moment that changed everything. A revenge game, a statement win, and a message the entire league couldn't ignore. Because the Indiana Fever are done being pushed around, and now they're fighting back.
After the last 2 games against the Valkyrie, after the last game against the Las Vegas Aces, a question many of us had was, who's going to step up on this Indiana Fever team when Caitlin Clark doesn't have it, when the shot's not falling? If she's not able to carry this team, who's willing to step up and show up when it matters the most, when it's time to buckle down and get this team a victory? Folks, after the last 2 games, I just wanted a win tonight.
Let's go back to where this all began. August 18th, 2024, the Indiana Fever roll into Seattle on a mission. Caitlin Clark is on fire, leading the league in assists, making history almost nightly, and injecting life into a franchise that had been written off for years. The Storm? They're on the back foot, down double digits in their own arena, unable to stop the bleeding. But as the clock winds down, something happens that changes everything. Caitlin Clark is doing what she always does, engaging the crowd, celebrating a blowout win, getting her teammates hyped. Nothing unusual. And then, as Skylar Diggins Smith walks off the court, she veers off her path and slams right into Clark. No foul called, no flagrant, no warning, just a shoulder, a message. The arena gasps. Replays tell the whole story. This wasn't a random collision. It was targeted, intentional, a cheap shot. Within minutes, social media lights up like wildfire. Fans are furious. Commentators are stunned. Even Dave Portnoy jumps in, calling it one of the dirtiest plays he's ever seen. His post racks up over 250,000 views in just 20 minutes. The outrage spreads fast. But what's even more infuriating for Fever fans is what comes next. Skylar goes to the post-game press conference with tears in her eyes, acting like she was the victim. She says she felt disrespected by Clark, that the Fever were showboating, that she didn't like how it ended. And to top it off, the Storm's coach defends her. The league says nothing, no fines, no suspensions, no accountability. Meanwhile, Clark stays quiet, classy, professional. But her teammates, you could see it on their faces. The disgust, the anger, the realization that no one was coming to protect their rookie star. And that's when something shifted. The Indiana Fever were no longer just building a team. They were building a memory. They remembered how that felt. They remembered how no one stood up for them. They remembered who sent that message and who walked away with no consequences. From that night forward, the Seattle Storm weren't just a rival. They were a target. This wasn't going to be forgotten. It was going to be repaid. And all it would take was time. Let's go back to where this all began. August 18th, 2024, the Indiana Fever roll into Seattle on a mission. Caitlin Clark is on fire, leading the league in assists, making history almost nightly, and injecting life into a franchise that had been written off for years. The Storm? They're on the back foot, down double digits in their own arena, unable to stop the bleeding. But as the clock winds down, something happens that changes everything. Caitlin Clark is doing what she always does, engaging the crowd, celebrating a blowout win, getting her teammates hyped. Nothing unusual. And then, as Skylar Diggins walks off the court, she veers off her path and slams right into Clark. No foul called, no flagrant, no warning, just a shoulder, a message. The arena gasps. Replays tell the whole story. This wasn't a random collision. It was targeted, intentional, a cheap shot. Within minutes, social media lights up like wildfire. Fans are furious. Commentators are stunned. Even Dave Portnoy jumps in, calling it one of the dirtiest plays he's ever seen. His post racks up over 250,000 views in just 20 minutes. The outrage spreads fast. But what's even more infuriating for Fever fans is what comes next. Skylar goes to the post-game press conference with tears in her eyes, acting like she was the victim. She says she felt disrespected by Clark, that the Fever were showboating, that she didn't like how it ended. And to top it off, the Storm's coach defends her. The league says nothing, no fines, no suspensions, no accountability. Meanwhile, Clark stays quiet, classy, professional. But her teammates, you could see it on their faces. The disgust, the anger, the realization that no one was coming to protect their rookie star. And that's when something shifted. The Indiana Fever were no longer just building a team. They were building a memory. They remembered how that felt. They remembered how no one stood up for them. They remembered who sent that message and who walked away with no consequences. From that night forward, the Seattle Storm weren't just a rival. They were a target. This wasn't going to be forgotten. It was going to be repaid. And all it would take was time. Every team has games they forget. This wasn't one of them. From the moment Skylar Diggins slammed into Caitlin Clark and walked away with zero consequences, the Indiana Fever knew they had unfinished business. They didn't say it out loud. They didn't whine in post-game interviews. They didn't go on social media and cry foul. They got quiet and they got angry. Behind the scenes, they circled a date on the calendar. June 24th, 2025. The rematch in Seattle. 10 months away. 10 months to remember the look on Diggins' face, the silence from the league, the way Seattle walked away as if nothing happened. But a moment like that doesn't just stay in the past, it changes the future. The Fever were already fighting to prove themselves. A team rebuilt from the ground up. A franchise clawing its way out of irrelevance. But now, they had something deeper, something personal. And while the spotlight stayed glued to Caitlin Clark, something else was happening in the shadows. Aaliyah Boston, the 2023 Rookie of the Year, was developing her offensive arsenal, getting stronger, smarter, and hungrier with every game. Her numbers were climbing, but more than that, her mindset had changed. She wasn't waiting for someone else to lead. She was preparing to do it herself. Lexie Hull, a former bench player, was grinding harder than ever, diving for loose balls, pushing through screens, watching film like her life depended on it. Nobody was talking about her yet. But that was fine. She wasn't doing it for attention. Kelsey Mitchell, already one of the league's most underrated scorers, she watched how every defense loaded up on Clark. And instead of stepping back, she sharpened her shot, worked on her spacing, and waited for her chance to remind people just how lethal she could be. And through it all, Caitlin Clark kept rising. She was the face of every billboard, every post, every headline. But for every jaw-dropping three she hit, there was a body check waiting. For every game-winning assist, there was a cheap shot. The target on her back wasn't shrinking, it was growing. The league was watching. The refs were swallowing whistles. Opponents were playing harder, fouling dirtier, and daring Indiana to break, but they didn't. Because that team, the one from August 2024, that team was gone. This was a new Fever, hardened, focused, not built around one star, but around something more powerful, shared pain. The league saw Caitlin Clark, but what they missed was the fire building behind her. And by the time June 24th arrived, that fire was ready to explode. June 24th, 2025, Climate Pledge Arena. 10 months of silence, 10 months of tension, 10 months of waiting for this exact night. The rematch was here, and it felt personal before the ball even tipped. You could feel it in the arena. The Seattle fans came ready to boo, ready to rattle Caitlin Clark, ready to recreate the chaos of last August. The Storm players walked out with confidence, maybe even arrogance. They knew what happened last time. They thought they could do it again. And for a few minutes, it looked like they might. Caitlin Clark, the same player who had been lighting up the league all season, came out cold. Ice cold. First shot, missed. Second shot, missed. Third, not even close. Her mechanics looked off. The rhythm was gone. Her confidence, slipping. By the second quarter, the whispers started. Is she rattled? Is this another Seattle collapse? By halftime, those whispers turned to cheers from the wrong crowd. Seattle fans jeered every time Clark touched the ball. Every miss got louder. Every three-pointer that clanked off the rim felt like a flashback to that fateful night in 2024. It wasn't just a shooting slump, it was a nightmare unfolding in real time. Clark couldn't shake it. She finished the night with just 6 points, shot 3 for 13 from the field, missed all 6 of her three-point attempts. Statistically, it was her worst game of the year, maybe of her entire basketball career. And if you're Seattle, you're thinking, we've got them again. They could feel the momentum shifting. The crowd sensed blood in the water. And why wouldn't they? Clark was supposed to be the engine, the identity, the star. If she was out, Indiana was done, right? Wrong. Because what happened next didn't just change the game, it changed the entire story. While Seattle focused all their energy on Caitlin Clark, they forgot about the 3 players who had been waiting quietly, patiently for this very moment, and they were about to make them pay for it. Caitlin Clark was cold, the crowd was loud, the moment was boiling, and then Aaliyah Boston stepped in. She didn't need a camera crew, she didn't need the spotlight. What she needed was this exact moment. The minute Seattle started celebrating Clark's shooting slump, Boston went to work, silently, ruthlessly, no flash, just force. The storm packed the paint, didn't matter. Boston drove right through them. They closed out on her mid-range jumper. Too late. She knocked it down. They rotated defenders. She went right at them, again and again and again. Every possession looked like a statement. Not just a bucket, but a message. You forgot about me. This wasn't just Aaliyah Boston playing well. This was Boston transforming into the anchor the Fever always needed her to be. A force, a problem, a walking mismatch. She bulldozed through contact. She finished with finesse. She played with the kind of confidence that makes opposing coaches squirm in their seats. And she didn't stop. By the end of the third quarter, she had already set a new career high. 31 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. But those numbers, they don't even tell half the story. What mattered was the tone she set. Every time she scored, the storm got quieter. Every time she drew a foul, the crowd deflated. Every time she hit the floor and popped back up, the energy shifted. This wasn't about Clark anymore. This wasn't about revenge for one play. This was about a team showing that they'd evolved. Aaliyah Boston wasn't playing backup anymore. She was the centerpiece, the enforcer, the weapon Seattle never saw coming. And while the cameras were still focused on Clark's off night, Boston was winning the war. While Aaliyah Boston was dropping buckets and making headlines, another story was quietly unfolding, one the box score almost missed. Lexie Hull, no hype, no headlines, just chaos. Hull didn't come into this game with a reputation. She wasn't expected to dominate. But when the moment came, she became exactly what Indiana needed. A spark plug, a disruptor, a wrecking ball in motion. She didn't light it up from deep. She didn't run the offense. What she did was everything else. She flew across the court, crashing the boards like she was 6 inches taller. She boxed out players with more muscle, more height, and way more recognition. Every loose ball, Hull was on it first. Every possession Seattle thought they secured, Hull ripped it out of their hands. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't flashy. It was relentless. She played like someone who had waited 10 months for this game, too. By the end of the night, Hull had recorded something she'd never done before. Her first career double-double, 15 points, 11 rebounds. Let that sink in. This wasn't someone known for dominating the glass. Her previous career high for rebounds? Just 9 in a game last year. But tonight, she smashed that. And it wasn't just the stats. It was when they happened. When Indiana needed a defensive stop, Hull grabbed the board. When the team looked like it might give up momentum, Hull dove on the floor. When Boston was doubled in the paint, Hull slipped behind the defense for an easy layup. She did everything no one else wanted to do, and she made it look like she loved it. Seattle didn't have an answer. They were looking for Caitlin Clark. They were watching Boston. But Hull, she snuck up behind them and stole the heart out of the game. She became the engine that kept Indiana pushing forward, never tiring, never blinking, just grinding. And by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, the Storm weren't just fighting Clark or Boston anymore. They were drowning in the waves Hull created. While Boston was dominating and Hull was grinding, Kelsey Mitchell was waiting, quiet, focused, calculating. She'd seen this movie before. Caitlin Clark draws the attention. The defenders swarm. The media fixates. The noise gets louder. And in all that chaos, there's one player who never flinches. Kelsey Mitchell has been in this league long enough to know when her moment's coming. And when it did, she didn't miss. At first, it was just a couple shots. A deep 3 off the wing, a pull-up off a screen. Nothing flashy, just clean execution. Then she hit another one, and another. By the fourth quarter, the Seattle defense started to panic. Their rotations got tighter. Their closeouts got desperate. Too late, Mitchell was locked in, and there was no pulling her out of it. She was calm, deadly, surgical. Shot after shot dropped, each one more demoralizing than the last. The Storm tried to double. She passed out. They tried to switch. She made them pay. They tried to ice her to the baseline. She stepped back and drilled a three right in their face. By the end of the night, Mitchell had dropped 26 points and nailed 5 three-pointers. But here's the historic part. This wasn't just a good night. It was her 14th career game with 25-plus points and 5 or more threes, pushing her into 5th all-time in WNBA history for most games like that. Think about that. While the headlines always orbit Clark, while defenses collapse on Boston, Mitchell is busy rewriting the record books in real time. She wasn't loud, she wasn't showboating, she was just efficient, ruthless, and unstoppable. And when the Fever needed someone to seal the win, when the Clark collapse could have opened the door, it was Kelsey Mitchell who slammed it shut. Every dagger three, every cold-blooded jumper, every broken defensive rotation she punished was a reminder. This team isn't built around one star anymore. It's built around depth, resilience, and killers like Kelsey Mitchell. Seattle thought they'd rattle the rookie. Instead, they triggered a masterpiece. By the fourth quarter, the facade was crumbling. Seattle came into this game riding a 3-game win streak. The crowd was rowdy. The team was confident. They thought they had this rematch under control, especially after Caitlin Clark went ice cold. They were wrong. Because while the spotlight fixated on Clark's shooting woes, they completely missed what was happening around them. Aaliyah Boston was dismantling their front court. Lexie Hull was dominating the hustle plays. Kelsey Mitchell was flat out cooking their defense from every angle. And then something subtle happened. Something you only notice if you've watched enough of these kinds of games. Seattle stopped believing. Their energy dipped. Their defensive switches slowed. Their shot selection got sloppy. Their body language sagged. You could see it in their eyes. They were rattled. They weren't just losing a basketball game. They were watching a team they once bullied walk back into their house and take everything from them. Every time Indiana scored, the noise in the arena got a little quieter. Every time Mitchell sank a three, heads on the Storm bench dropped just a little lower. And every time Boston powered through for another bucket in the paint, the realization got louder. This team isn't afraid of us anymore. By the final minutes, it wasn't even competitive. The scoreboard read 94-86, but it felt like 120-0. The Storm were completely outmatched, physically, emotionally, and mentally. They didn't just get outplayed, they got out-toughed, outworked, outwilled. That cocky smirk they wore last August? Gone. That edge they played with in 2024? Gone. All that was left was frustration, fatigue, and silence. Because the Indiana Fever, once seen as a one-player show, had become a machine. A team with layers, with balance, with backbone. And they didn't just beat Seattle, they broke them. When the final buzzer sounded, it felt like more than the end of a game. It felt like a chapter closing. The scoreboard read not 94-86, but those numbers barely scratched the surface of what had just happened. 10 months of frustration, 10 months of questions, 10 months of waiting to respond without saying a word. Now, the Fever had their answer, and they delivered it loud. The moment the game ended, the bench cleared, not out of panic, but pure, unfiltered joy. Players were jumping into each other's arms, laughing, screaming, hugging, like they'd just clinched a playoff spot. This wasn't about a win, this was about relief, vindication, revenge. For Caitlin Clark, it wasn't her best night, but she didn't need to be the hero. Instead, she was the first to wrap her arms around Boston, the first to shout praise for Hull, and the first to smile through every second of the celebration. She knew what this game meant, maybe more than anyone else. And as the cameras rolled in the locker room, you could see it. A team that finally found its identity. A team that no longer needed one player to carry them. A team that had each other's backs when it mattered most. Head coach Stephanie White summed it up perfectly. We've played a lot of games where we show up for 30 minutes, maybe 35, and fade late. But tonight, we gave 40. Full effort, full focus, full trust. She praised Boston for staying poised after early foul trouble and turning in the most efficient, aggressive performance of her career. She called Hull the pulse of the night, a player who never stopped moving. And she called Mitchell the anchor, cool under pressure, lethal when it counted. White didn't just talk about X's and O's. She talked about chemistry, growth, belief. This team used to fracture when things got tough, but tonight we stayed together. We trusted each other. And that's the difference between last year and now. You could feel it in every interview. Aaliyah Boston, grinning from ear to ear, said it felt like a statement night. She called it the most complete game they'd played as a unit. Lexie Hull couldn't stop smiling. She just posted her first double-double and joked that she didn't even realize it until someone pointed it out after the buzzer. And Kelsey Mitchell? She kept it short. They tried to break us. Instead, they woke us up. In the locker room, the music was blasting. The laughter didn't stop. Players danced, shouted, and passed around game balls like they were champagne bottles. It didn't feel like midseason. It felt like a moment they'd been chasing for nearly a year. And now, they finally had it. This wasn't just about the scoreboard. It wasn't just about the 94-86 final. It wasn't even about revenge, at least not in the way people expected. This was about evolution, because what the Indiana Fever showed on June 24th, 2025, was that they're no longer a one-player team, and that might be the most dangerous thing in the WNBA right now. Caitlin Clark had the worst shooting performance of her season. Just 6 points, no threes, no rhythm. And for the first time, the world got to see what this team looks like without her carrying the weight. And the result? Total domination. Aaliyah Boston reminded the league that she's not just a sidekick. She's a future MVP. Lexie Hull turned chaos into victory with hustle plays no highlight reel can measure. And Kelsey Mitchell calmly shot her way into WNBA history like she'd been waiting her whole life for that fourth quarter. This wasn't a fluke, it was proof. Proof that the Indiana Fever have built something sustainable. Something terrifying, something real. They didn't fold when their star went cold. They didn't collapse under pressure. They didn't blink when the storm came swinging. They fought back, and this time, they had the firepower to win without needing a miracle. Last year, they were the team getting pushed around. Now, they're the team pushing back. And if you're the rest of the league, you better stop focusing just on Caitlin Clark. Because the Fever are deeper, hungrier, stronger, and most importantly, they've finally found out who they are. A team that plays 40 full minutes. A team that rallies when things go wrong. A team that never forgot the hit job and made sure everyone remembered the payback. This wasn't just a win, it was a warning.